Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Rabbi yassir wa la tu'assir, Rabbi tammim bil khair. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. Alhamdulillah, today we will continue our learning of the Prophet ﷺ so that we can extract, we can cultivate, inculcate numerous lessons that we can uphold in our daily life so that our life become very meaningful, that it becomes more focused, it becomes more dedicated towards the performance of goodness for the benefits in this world and in the hereafter. Now, last week, we talked about the Prophet ﷺ's return from Tabuk and how he dealt with three companions who failed to follow him because they were procrastinating, because they delayed their journey to join the Prophet ﷺ. And this week, we're going to look at a very minor, a very small, a very small event. And in history books, this is very, it is mentioned, it is small as compared to the other major events. But when you talk about the Prophet's life and you talk about the events that happen in his life, no matter how small, no matter how short it is, in relativity to other events, they are still important. And today we're going to dedicate our lesson to just this one event and learn its significance. Now, upon the return of Prophet ﷺ from Tabuk, he immediately ordered for a Hajj delegation led by Saidina Abu Bakar Siddiq. Means that the performance of Hajj, right, when the Prophet returned from Tabuk, was led by Saidina Abu Bakar Siddiq. The Prophet stayed in Medina, whereas Saidina Abu Bakar Siddiq, he led 300 Muslims on a pilgrimage. Now, that mission the Prophet led, of the mission to Tabuk, it was the last expedition ever by the Prophet ﷺ. So he will return, and then the time in Medina will be spent, all right, dealing with delegations, with ambassadors until the rest of his life. So that was the last mission. So if you remember, if you've been following our classes consistently, it has been the most eventful last few months of the Prophet's life when he had to, since the mission to the peaceful conquest of Mecca, and then Tabuk, the Battle of Hunain, all right, and henceforth. So it has been almost non-stop. And now there is a break. There is supposedly a period of time whereby there is no more engagements, there's no more military expeditions to deter the threat that is posed to the Arabian Peninsula. And that's when Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq led 300 companions to perform the Hajj. Now, this event looks very normal, right, in the sense that also he leads people to perform the Hajj, but it brings to us a very significant point for us to consider, that the importance of us to always take a break, right? In the midst of our exertions, it's important for us to take a spiritual break. So the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us this very important lesson. And through the lives of the companions, that in all your exertions, there's a time for you to actually put aside some time to concentrate on yourselves, to concentrate on three R's that I'm going to talk about here today. The importance of reflection, the importance of recharging, the importance of reconnecting. First, our reflection. So you notice that after this whole long haul of event, the Prophet sent Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq to go to perform the Hajj. And it is important for us to remember that Hajj is an event, is an event, a ritual that calls for a lot of reflection. It calls for a lot of understanding of rituals. It's just not the mere completion of rituals. It is actually the performance of rituals with an in-depth understanding of reviewing our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the importance of getting connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you perform Hajj, it's supposed to be a process whereby you start to revisit our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and see how we can enhance it. So when you return from Hajj, you're supposed to be a better person than when you left for it. So this is the reality that the Prophet ﷺ is trying to inculcate in the companions. In the midst of all that we have gone through, in the midst of all that we have experienced, it is important that you put aside some time to perform some rituals that actually gets you connected closely with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this was what happens when they perform the Hajj. And therefore, it brings me to my first point, the importance of reflection. We are so busy with our commitments in life, with our pursuits in life. Sometimes we don't have time to sit back and revisit and review ourselves, to take a look at ourselves, to look into ourselves, and to see how far we have progressed. We can be doing so many things, but we are still the same person. We can be doing so many things which are outwardly good, but spiritually we are still empty. So it's a time for us to reflect. And Imam al-Ghazali says one of the things that we need to consider after subuh, after fajr every day, is reflection. He says, spend your fajr in four things. After perform your fajr prayers, spend it in four things. First, to recite the Quran. Second, to always recite the zikrullah. It can be la ilaha illallah, it can be subhanallah, it can be alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar. And thirdly, to make dua, to make prayers for yourselves, for your family members, for people around you. But fourthly, he says that it's important for us to take a step back and do some reflection. How have we been as a Muslim, as an individual? How have we been as sons, as daughters, as husbands, as wives, as parents? How have we performed? How are we as a member of society? How much have we contributed? How much have we given? How much have we consumed and decided not to give back? So these are things that we need to consider. So it's important for us to take a step back. And in the life that we live in today, we are so engrossed in pursuing our goals, and we are so engrossed to showcase our pursuits, to showcase our achievements. Have we actually sat back and considered, have I actually made progress myself? Have I genuinely been able to fulfill the purpose of my creation? وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That is for the purpose of worship. That I'm supposed to get closer to my creator by the day. That with so many things that I've done, does it translate into quality? For all the quantity that I proclaim to the world that I've done, have I been someone who has elevated myself to be close to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala? So it's important for us to reflect. And through this reflection and this acts of spirituality brings me to my next point, the importance of us recharging, to always have spirituality, because spirituality enhances the physical commitments that we have. If we engage in physical commitments without spirituality, it compromises our sincerity. And even if we are sincere, and if this sincerity is not further built upon with more acts of spirituality, with more acts that actually makes us close to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, this sincerity will wane eventually. So we need to build within ourselves consistent spirituality, consistent practices that connects us with our Creator. In addition to our exertions, yes, our exertions can be of all our exertions should be beneficial for the community, for our family members, for those people that we see every day. Those are our commitments, and they all get rewards in the hereafter, inshallah. But it's important for us to base all these commitments on a strong basis, which is our spirituality. And this spirituality will keep our sincerity in check, and it will also ensure that our sincerity is intact. Our sincerity is in check because without sincerity, all deeds are rejected. But it needs to be intact as well, because if it's gone, then you lose all purposes in life. Which is why it's important for us, and the scholars keep telling us this, that we need to put aside time for reflection. We need to put aside time for routines that help our spirituality. We all have our physical routines. We have 3 meals a day. And sometimes when we miss our morning breakfast, we make up for it through brunch. You don't call it lunch anymore, you call it brunch, because it's our breakfast and lunch put together. We pay so much time to ensure that our physical commitments are being attended to, that these are parts of our routines. How about our spiritual routines? Imam Ghazali said just now that after subuh, Quran, zikrullah, dua, and then to also do reflection. This is part of establishing a routines. Do we have routines to ensure that our spirituality is consistent, to ensure that our spirituality is fed, so that our physical rigors become healthy, so that our physical rigors becomes purposeful, that it becomes meaningful, that it's just not going through the motion. And this is how we go about life every day. That we might be doing the same things every day, like work for that matter, but what gives it meaning? What gives it drive? What gives it a sense of purpose that you can do the same things every day, but you come home feeling fulfilled, that you feel, if you feel, go home feeling energized, that you don't get distraught, that you don't get affected by what happens through life every day, is this strong sense of spirituality. So it's important for us, therefore, to establish routines. And if you look at the Prophet ﷺ's life, it is one that is based upon routines. There are some things that he does not miss, which is why in acts of worship you have things that he says that's ghairu muakkada, that he doesn't leave it, right? That he that is sorry, there are these that are muakkada, means that he doesn't miss it, and there's ghairu muakkada, at times he does it, at times he doesn't. For example, in zuhur prayers, he doesn't miss the qabliyah, doesn't miss the ba'diyah. So these are muakkada. And then those ghairu muakkada, at times he does 4 before zuhur and 4 after zuhur. But most importantly is that he puts aside time in between before and after zuhur to perform this. That he feels that that in all his engagements, the Prophet puts aside time, that he disciplines himself to commit himself to doing goodness. Do we do that? Or we have a changing routine every day? We can have a changing routine, but some things must remain fixed. We can have many routines every day, but we must read the Quran every day. We can have changing routines every day, but we must do zikrullah, we must do salawat, and henceforth, so that we build on our spirituality, so that we become intact. Which brings me to my next point, the importance of reconnection. Do we realize this? Which is what Prophet ﷺ says this in a very poignant hadith. He says, Man isdada ilma, lam yazdad huda, lam yazdad minallahi illa bu'da. Whomsoever increases in knowledge, but he doesn't increase in hidayah, in guidance, he doesn't increase in anything but distance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does that mean? In our pursuits, he says that, so in this case, knowledge. In a pursuit of knowledge, there's a need for us to actually build on our previous points, to actually reflect, to actually have spirituality, so that we find meaning in what we do. And finding meaning in what we do will be manifested through our increased distance and our increased closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That we become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That we find stronger connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can be doing so many things, but look at our prayers. It becomes something that we go through the motion with. Now, the purpose of all good things must translate into meaningful relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then this meaningful relationship will then be part of a cycle to continue doing good to the community. We cannot be committing ourselves to so many events, so many activities, so many commitments, which compromises our spirituality, our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, all these things are supposed to enhance and complement our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is something we need to bear in mind with, that we need to find time to reconnect to our Creator. Which is why the Prophet ﷺ, he is the most active person in Medina. He's the most active person in doing good things. But at night, he is the most connected person to the Creator. That he gets up and does his prayers, because those times are needed. Why? Because we need to keep check, to keep stock of the realities of our commitments. Where are we now? Do not lose ourselves in the midst of all these commitments. Which brings us to the next point. Do not lose sight of our immediate responsibilities to be reconnected to those people who have made sacrifices for us to pursue our commitments. Who? Our family members. To be reconnected with them again. The Prophet says, "Khairukum khairukum li ahli wa ana khairukum li ahli." The best amongst you are those who treat their family members best, and I treat my family members the best. So we might be performing so many things, so many good deeds, but then we lose track and we lose sight, we lose connection to the very people that have become our linchpins, they have become our pillars of strength throughout our commitments. So this short event is very significant. And it is not lost on the companions. Fast forward to a few years after the Prophet's death, and during the time of Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, it was the Battle of Yarmouk, a great battle. It was a 6-day battle involving the Muslims against the Byzantium Empire in Jordan. Right? It's the Battle of Yarmouk. And in the Battle of Yarmouk, the Muslims won, and they were led by Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid. And in a very interesting event, after the 6-day battle, while they were returning back to Damascus, while they were returning back to Syria, Suddenly, Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid, he disappeared. He disappeared. He was at the back of the troops. He always was at the back, and then he disappeared, and no one noticed. And where did he go? He went to perform his Hajj. Now, this person, like all the soldiers, they were exhausted from a 6-day battle, the Great Byzantium Empire. They were victorious. But again, Sayyidina Khalid bin Walid manifested what is the norm. What is the norm that is shown by the Prophet and the companions, that despite all our rigors, there must be time set aside for spiritual development, set aside for reflection. So he went to perform the Hajj. And he was short. He did the fundamentals of the Hajj and came back to join the soldiers. And no one noticed that he was gone until he removed his helmet and he was bald. Do you know that he has performed? He has performed his Hajj. And this is a very important thing for us to take note of. Again, therefore, as our lessons for today, and it's short, that it's important for us to spend time to reflect, to recharge, and reconnect. So now that it's ended, the mission has ended, expedition has ended, so that's the end? Nope. Because next week we're going to look at how the Prophet ﷺ, he will deal with he was going to talk about how he deal with deputations, with delegations, with ambassadors who now started to come to Medina to learn more about Islam. Now that Islam has spread far and wide, they have decided to come. And then this is when you start to see that da'wah takes many forms. You see that da'wah is not just about actively, right, engaging your enemy, be it by in warfare and henceforth, but it's also about having words, by sitting and explaining. And all these calls for two important things: for knowledge and wisdom. Right? The knowledge and wisdom to engage on the battlefield, knowledge and wisdom to engage in a da'wah by using your body. But it's also important for us to have, all right, knowledge and wisdom to engage intellectually with the people who come and seek from us knowledge about the religion. But that will be for next week, where we look at some interesting aspects of the Prophet's da'wah in how he deals with the deputations that came to him. Alhamdulillah, untuk minggu ini kita melihat bahawasanya pada minggu lepas kita melihat bagaimana Nabi SAW pulang daripada misi ke Tabuk, dan ini adalah misi terakhir yang dipimpin oleh Rasulullah SAW sebelum baginda wafat. Dan hari ini kita akan mengambil hanya secebis daripada sejarah baginda yang mungkin kita terlepas pandang dan orang tak mau cerita pasal bab ni, tapi mempunyai kesan yang sangat besar untuk kita sebagai seorang yang ingin mengambil pengajaran daripada kehidupan kita. Iaitu bahawasanya Nabi SAW selepas pulang daripada peristiwa Tabuk, maka memerintahkan Saidina Abu Bakar Siddiq untuk memimpin delegasi haji. Sebanyak 300 orang sahabat menunaikan ibadah haji dipimpin oleh Saidina Abu Bakar Siddiq. Nah, kita melihat ini perkara biasa saja, balik pergi haji. Tapi kita lihat ibadah haji ini dilaksanakan setelah rentetan demi rentetan peristiwa ataupun komitmen Rasulullah SAW kepada perkara dakwah. Maknanya selepas menakluki kota Mekah secara aman, peperangan Hunain, kemudian misi Tabuk, seolah tak berhenti. Tapi tiba-tiba lepas ini semua habis, haji. Nah, apakah perkara yang kita boleh ambil daripada sini? Ialah pentingnya untuk kita faham bahawasanya dalam kesibukan kita, walaupun dalam melaksanakan kebaikan, aktiviti kita, kerja dakwah kita, khidmat kita, segala aktiviti-aktiviti kemasyarakatan kita, komitmen kita, penting untuk kita mengambil langkah untuk lebih mendekat, untuk menghimbau, untuk melihat ke dalam diri kita dan melihat sejauh manakah kita telah berkembang sebagai seorang hamba Allah. Kadang-kadang kita terlepas pandang, kita sibuk buat banyak kebaikan, kita mempunyai persepsi dah baik apa, kita sudah buat baik, tentu sekali baik. Nah, perlu untuk kita mengambil langkah. Betul ke kita baik? Contoh paling mudah, kita aktif dengan pelbagai benda, bagaimana keadaan solat kita? Sebab Allah mengatakan inna rahmatallahi qaribun minal muhsinin. Kebaikan itu membawa kepada rahmat Allah SWT. Nah, ia patut tercerna pada ibadah kita. Kualiti ibadah kita sepatutnya meningkat, bukan? Nah, kita lihat kita buat banyak benda kebaikan, tapi kualiti kita bila bersama Allah itu kekurangan. Nah, ini tak akan dapat kita sedari tanpa kita melakukan muhasabah diri. Maka penting untuk kita dalam kesibukan ini, sebagai contoh ibadah haji. Kenapa haji? Sebab haji itu satu proses yang memerlukan kita untuk bukan sahaja menjalani ritual-ritual, perbuatan-perbuatan, rukun-rukunnya, tapi untuk kita mendalami, menginsafi, menghayati dan mengintrospeksi diri kita. Untuk kita melihat keadaan diri kita yang sebenarnya. Haji itu adalah satu proses mana kita tinggalkan segala komitmen kita untuk komitmen yang lebih besar, iaitu untuk melihat kepada diri kita sebagai paksi yang akan menghadap Allah SWT. Nah, kalau kita ini dalam diri kita ini tak ada kebenaran ataupun tak ada jiwa yang tulus, maka selama ini yang kita buat adalah satu perkara yang boleh kita anggap bahawasanya ia adalah satu yang sia-sia kerana ia tidak terdetik daripada hati yang ikhlas. Maka perlu untuk seorang Islam itu ada muhasabah. Kerana muhasabah itu akan memastikan bahawasanya keikhlasan itu tetap terjaga. Begitulah Nabi SAW mengajar kita. Begitulah yang diajarkan oleh Imamul Ghazali kepada kita. Bahawa setiap hari seorang anak Adam itu, seorang hamba Allah itu, selepas subuh, habiskan masanya untuk 4 perkara. Banyak membaca Al-Quran, banyak berzikir, banyak berdoa, dan banyak dia bermuhasabah. Kerana muhasabah ini menjaga keikhlasan kita dan memastikan bahawasanya walaupun kita ikhlas, ikhlas itu diiringi dengan istiqamah. Tidak mudah tergugat dengan ujian, tidak mudah terpesona dengan pujian. Itu pertama. Kedua, perlu pula untuk kita melihat bahawasanya pentingnya muhasabah itu membawa kepada pentingnya untuk kita memperkasa kerohanian kita. Kerohanian itu memastikan bahawasanya keadaan fizikal kita ini terjaga dan terfokus. Kadang-kadang kita ni buat banyak benda, tapi kadang-kadang kita merasakan benda yang kita buat ni hari demi hari memenatkan kita, melelahkan kita dan kita mula merasakan bahawasanya kenapa aku buat ni semua. Nah, cara untuk mengubati ini lahir daripada kita banyak mengingat Allah SWT. Kita perlu kekuatan rohani untuk menghadapi kehidupan yang semakin menguji kita, yang semakin mengganggu gugat ketenteraman rohani kita. Perlu kepada kerohanian itu sendiri. Bagaimana mendapatkannya? Adakan jadual pada kerohanian kita. Macam mana tu Ustaz? Allah mengatakan inna solata kanat al mu'mina kitaban mauquta. Jaga waktu-waktu solat kita. Tambah dengan ibadat-ibadat yang mana kita rasakan kita tak boleh tinggalkan. Nabi ada rutin pada kerohanian baginda. Nabi ada ibadat namanya solat-solat sunat muakkadah. Maknanya Nabi tak pernah tinggalkan. Untuk mengajar kita rutin Nabi ini, macam mana sibuk Nabi, Nabi tak pernah tinggalkan sesetengah ibadah itu. Begitu juga kita. Sibuk kita macam mana pun, walaupun atas nama kebaikan, perlu untuk kita ada menjaga rutin-rutin kita seharian kita. Quran jangan tinggal, zikrullah jangan tinggal, sembahyang sunat jangan tinggal. Kenapa? Inilah yang memastikan bahawasanya segala yang kita buat di luar sana itu tetap bertenaga, tetap terfokus, tetap tidak merasa lesu. Ada benda baik kita buat, mula-mula kita semangat. Lama-lama kita rasa penat. Lama-lama kita merasa lesu, kita rasa malas, kita rasa macam tak nak sambung lagi, kita rasa kurang bersemangat sebagaimana awalnya. Kenapa? Kerohanian itu tidak menguatkan kita untuk memburunya. Itu yang kedua. Ketiga, perlu untuk kita fikirkan balik bahawasanya di akhirnya kita ini dicipta untuk ibadah kepada Allah SWT. Untuk kita menjalin hubungan Allah SWT. Bagaimana kita dengan Allah SWT? Jangan kita menjadi orang yang merasakan kita dah buat banyak benda. Tentu sekali kita baik. Tidak. Jadi itu penting. Maka Nabi ini orang yang paling kuat beribadah di kota Madinah. Bahkan orang yang paling kuat ibadah di kalangan hamba Allah SWT. Tapi di malam-malam baginda, beliau ini banyak berjasa pada siang harinya. Malam-malam baginda tetap beribadah dengan bersungguh-sungguh. Untuk mengajar kita perlunya ada masa kita dengan Allah SWT. Dan juga perlunya ada masa kita dengan ahli keluarga kita, kaum kerabat kita. Yang mana mereka telah berkorban supaya kita dapat memburu misi kita. Sebagai contoh, anak isteri kita. Yang mana kita ni keluar untuk buat macam-macam aktiviti daripada bekerja dan kita jadi menjadi seorang aktivis dakwah dan sebagainya. Kita kadang-kadang terlepas pandang. Ada orang yang telah berkorban masa mereka, telah terkorban masa mereka kerana kita. Kerana kita keluar di sana. Maka Nabi mengajar kita bahawasanya tetap ada masa untuk mereka semua. Nah, di sinilah kita melihat kembali lagi bagaimana peristiwa melaksanakan ibadah haji Saidina Abu Bakar Siddiq itu mengajar kita supaya kita meluangkan masa untuk kita kembali melihat keadaan diri kita. Untuk melihat keadaan diri kita dengan Allah SWT dan orang-orang yang telah berkorban untuk kita. Dan pada minggu hadapan kita akan melihat pula dakwah Nabi secara fizikal ini, aktif ini, secara peperangan, secara misi dakwah dan sebagainya. Sekarang pada minggu hadapan kita melihat baginda menerima pula wakil-wakil daripada kabilah-kabilah Arab, daripada pemerintah-pemerintah yang berdekatan dengan baginda untuk belajar tentang Islam, untuk menganut agama Islam. Untuk mengajar kita dakwah ini dalam pelbagai bentuk. Dakwah dalam pelbagai bentuk fizikal, sebagaimana Nabi berdakwah untuk menghalang kemarahan musuh. Bagaimana Nabi berperang untuk menewaskan musuh-musuh yang mengancam keselamatan kota Madinah. Nah, dakwah juga dalam bentuk kata-kata. Dan kedua-dua ini, sama ada dakwah secara tubuh badan ataupun kata-kata, memerlukan kepada dua perkara lagi, iaitu ilmu dan hikmah. Dan pada minggu hadapan, kita akan menghabiskan masa kita untuk melihat bagaimana Nabi SAW menggunakan ilmu dan hikmah untuk menanggapi kabilah-kabilah orang yang datang berdakwah dengan baginda. Semoga kita menjadi orang-orang yang aktif, yang bersungguh-sungguh buat kebaikan, tapi pada waktu yang sama kita tetap tidak hilang hubungan kita dengan Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. Wassallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi washabihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Terima kasih.